For the first few slides, I'm going to walk you through the different types of resumes. Each type of resume serves a different function, and depending on which position you are applying for or what your previous experience has been or not been, these resumes will help showcase your talents and your strengths to all future employers. The first resume that we will speak about is a chronological resume. As you can see by the picture on the screen, this is a very traditional resume, a resume which you would expect to see, and it focuses more on dates and job duties. If you've had progressive job experience, so if you have had experience where you've been in a position and you've raised to different positions, along with a good education background and a strong set of qualifications, this might be the resume for you. You'll notice in the picture there's an objective. You could easily swap this out with a summary or a skill summary, sort of like a mini cover letter to kind of introduce a future employer to you and your resume. And you could also add a references section at the end of this resume. Next, we will talk about a functional resume. This resume focuses more on skills and experience rather than work history, and is best used for those who have a gap in their employment history. So if you're a new grad or a young alumni and you haven't had a lot of work experience, but you still want to showcase your skills, this might be a good resume for you. If you've gained a lot of kind of hands-on skills during your education, during your training, but you don't have that work experience behind you, you might want to look at a functional resume. Similar to a chronological resume, a combination resume combines both a chronological and a functional, and it focuses heavily on your work history and your skill set. This type of resume might be ideal for somebody who maybe they did work placements during their time in school, whether that be a co-op or an internship, or you were placed somewhere. And you have real experience. Maybe it was entry-level experience, but you have real experience, but you also have that hands-on experience and you've gained those skills from those experiences. So this might be a good style resume for if you're that kind of person. Finally, as you might have guessed, a targeted resume is a resume that is geared towards a specific job posting. This resume is meant to highlight in great detail your skills and experience that would make you the ideal candidate for the position. This type of resume isn't meant to hide anything, especially your education, but it highlights those aspects of you and your background that would make you the ideal candidate for a position. If you're applying for a retail position, if you're applying for a cashier's position in a grocery store, maybe a crew member at a fast food restaurant, you wouldn't use this type of resume. But if you were applying for a higher level HR position, maybe a position in an accounting firm, and you wanted to really highlight what experience makes you the right fit for that position, this would be a good style resume. So now that we've spoken about the different types of resumes, I want to walk you through each of the sections. As you will see, some of these sections are optional depending on the type of resume, but I want to break them down piece by piece and kind of give you a little bit more information as to why you should include these sections in your resume. The first section I will speak about is your contact information. You will see on the screen that there are two different options for your contact information. 90% of the time, you should provide option one, your street address, your name, at the bare minimum, your city, your province, and your postal code. However, if you're moving, you might be between residences, you might be in a short-term rental. It is okay to provide number two. Just know that at some point, whether it's during the interview, through the hiring process, your contract, your future employer will find out where you live. That sounds a little creepy, but they will find out where you live because they'll need that for your personnel file eventually, for tax receipts, for a whole host of other reasons. So like I said, if you can provide number one, provide number one. But if you're hesitant due to your, due to a personal situation, you can provide number two. I also will note, if you live in Sydney and you're applying for a position in Halifax, make sure you mention somewhere, whether it's in your cover letter, or it's in your LinkedIn, or it's somewhere that you're willing to relocate. Because if you're applying to a position in Halifax and they see a Sydney address, they may, you may kick to the pile quicker. So just make sure that if you're applying to positions abroad, that you're willing to relocate and that you clearly state that to a potential employer. Next up is the skills summary, or the highlight section. This is an important section because it provides you an opportunity to let your future employer know what makes you stand out. You will note the graphic to the right of your page from Indeed that lists hard and soft skills. You want to provide a future employer a mix of both in your skills summary. Your hard skills are those technical skills, stuff that you would have learned, stuff that you would have been educated on, while your soft skills are, personal traits that make you employable. Are you dependable? Are you a team player? Can you critically think? Those type of things they're general, but if you don't feel you have that, don't put them on your resume. And the other thing about the hard skills is make sure that they're truthful. Don't put that you're proficient in Microsoft Excel if you're not. Don't lie. Talk about what your skills are and what you're proud of and what you can do, and then the rest will kind of fall in after that. So one of the most important parts of your resume would be your employment history. If you have an employment history, because I know that, there are some new grads and there's some people in university that don't have a vast employment history, and that's fine. In that sense, you would build on your skill set and your education and maybe your volunteer experiences. But every experience you have builds on the one before. And before you know it, that's why a resume is so good, because it's a history. So, you can see that you worked as a clerk in a grocery store and now you're a successful entrepreneur. So it's a, it's as much as a reflection as it is a future looking document. These experiences show potential employers where you have been and what experiences you have. When you're writing your employment history, two things to keep in mind. It must be easy to read, and it must be in reverse chronological order. So it must go from oldest to newest. So, if you were, if you were a clerk in a grocery store when you were young, and now you're, a CPA in an accounting firm, the CPA position would be at the top and the grocery clerk would be on the bottom. Also include a description for every position. Now those positions will get bigger based on the position and as you grow in your professional life. But I've seen a lot of resumes that just say crew member at McDonald's, and that was it. Yes, we all have a general sense of what you do as a crew member at a fast food restaurant, but give a few bullets about what you've done. There could be a skill that you've learned that could be valuable to a future organization. So try to provide in your own words, if you haven't been given a job description, what you actually did during your time there. So another important part, and for some positions, it's the most important, is your education. If you're going to apply to be a medical doctor at the hospital, they're going to make sure that you were trained as a medical doctor. If they see that you were trained as an accountant, you're not getting the job. So education is very important depending on the position you're applying for. When you're writing this section, the same as your employment, it should be in reverse chronological order. So you should start, with your high school. There's no need to go below high school, so there's no need to talk about junior high or anything else. Start with your high school diploma and then go up from there. So your university degree, your college degree, any certificates, anything like that. Ensure that it's up to your most recent. I've provided an example of how it should look. That can be flexible depending on, how you want it to look. It can be in 2 columns. You can use the tab, you can use the space, but just make sure it's clean and concise, and that, the employer that's looking at your resume can see, okay, this student or this person, got a business degree from CPU with a major in marketing. Another important section is your extracurricular and your volunteer activities. Today, so many companies are focused on corporate social responsibility and the impact they have on the world around them. If you can show to a potential employer right out of the gate, right on your resume, that you're community-minded, that you're willing to pitch in, it definitely could set you apart. No matter what, these activities are always worth mentioning, and it shows that you can balance a life outside of work. I mentioned this quote here, your network is your net worth. Annette Fisher, and she's Chancellor of CBU, and she's a successful businesswoman. She mentioned this quote in her book, Bet on Me, and it's true, because maybe you volunteered for Celtic Colors when you were in high school. And then a couple of years later, you're sitting in front of one of the board members on Celtic Colors for a job interview. You never know when you volunteer for something how it can affect your professional career. So it's always something to keep in mind. Your references should always be included if possible. If you have guaranteed references, you should include them. If you're kind of walking around, face-to-face, handing in resumes, especially for, maybe positions in retail or something like that, you can include them right on your resume. Some people choose to include your references as available upon request. If you do that, or if the company doesn't ask for references up front, make sure you have your references ready. So, if you get to the interview, and make sure maybe you have a sheet of paper in your bag with your references listed, or you have them electronically, and you can just kind of send them off. Also, make sure that your references are good. People would rather say no to a reference than provide a bad reference, but you never know. So make sure that the people you're asking for references are going to provide you a good reference. There are always 2 sides to one story. So maybe, a reference might want to tell a future employer this to get it off their chest, but just make sure you know who you're asking for your references. So saying all of that, just a couple of kind of tips on resumes before we get to the final couple of slides. All resumes must be proofread for grammar and spelling. Word processors like Microsoft Word, they can spell check and they can do all that, but have somebody else read over your resume. There are great organizations like Nova Scotia Works and the YMCA that are there to help in the community. Career Services at CBU is there to help CBU students and recent alumni. So there's always somebody that's willing to read over a resume. So if you do it yourself, it's good to get a second glance. Be neat and tidy. There's lots of different templates out there for resumes. At the end of the day, it's not really how it looks, it's the quality of the content in the resume, and make sure that comes across all right. One of the first things I look at a resume is how it's structured. Is it organized? Is it clean? And then I dive into, the experience on the resume. So just make sure it's neat and tidy. Only include relevant and truthful information. Again, don't apply to be a doctor if you're a business graduate. And don't say you're a doctor if you're not a doctor. It's very simple, but again, and back to the Excel, if you're not proficient in Excel, don't write that you're proficient in Excel, because you will get caught in that lie eventually, and you will get backed up against a wall. Celebrate yourself in your resume. We're taught not to brag, but a resume is a chance for you to brag about yourself and your accomplishments. If you've received a certificate, a diploma, an award, anything like that, mention it in your resume. You never know, you never know how that's going to reflect, that can only reflect positively on yourself and for future employers. And it always provide up-to-date contact information. I didn't mention this up above, but make sure you have a professional email. you know, as close to your first and last name as you can get it. You know, there might have to be a number or another item in there, but try not to provide a future employer with your resume that says cutie pie 97. It's just not professional, and it doesn't keep your email top of mind. If they know your name, then they'll be able to associate it with your email. So just, you know, even if you keep your old email for other things, but have an email for your resumes, I would suggest that. So now that we know everything that's involved with the resume, you know, you can easily apply that to Microsoft Word, you know, with a little bit of editing, create a very nice resume. However, if you would like, there are different platforms out there that will help you create a resume. LinkedIn is one of those sites. So if you have LinkedIn and it's well developed, you have your jobs in there, you have your job description, you have your education, skills, certificates, you know, all that sort of stuff. LinkedIn will actually make you a resume. So you'll see here, this is my kind of landing page, my profile. When you go onto your profile, you'll see the More section. You'll click the More section. You'll see Build a Resume, and then you'll go from there. And then it'll give you a couple of different styles of resumes. Some will include your picture, some will not. It's kind of up to you which way you want to take, but they do provide a nice resume. Along with this, there's also Indeed will give you a resume. I meant to mention LinkedIn, you can only do it on the desktop version. Indeed, you can do it both on desktop and mobile. But the same thing for Indeed, you come onto your landing page, you click resume, you go into your profile, you click download resume, and it will give you 4 options to choose from. So, you know, that's an option. If, like I said, I would suggest you just, you know, you do something through Word on your own. But if you choose to take this route, it will provide you with some nice resumes. So finally, on the topic of resumes and cover letters, you are the product and the employer is the potential buyer. You are trying to sell yourself. So ensure that your resume captures you the best it can. You know, we mentioned positive language. We mentioned celebrating your accomplishments. It should be neat and tidy. You know, the contact information, all of that. You are selling yourself. And your resume is kind of the flyer to get the people in the door. So just kind of be cautious of that when you're building your resume, and you should do fine. So anyways, thank you for listening. I know it's a dry topic on a hot day. My information is there. If any of you ever want to reach out, you know, you can contact me. We can chat about the exciting topic of resumes all day long, and I'll pass it on to the next presenter.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much, Joey. That was particularly the line about celebrating yourself really was just perfect. Thank you for a great presentation. So I'd just like to, once again, that was Joey Weaver of CBU Career Services, a spring graduate of CBU with a BBA from the Shannon School of Business. And I just wanted to clarify, Joey just presented on resumes. Our next presentation's on job search, and our final our final presentation is on what an employer thinks. And so we're kind of giving you a nice spectrum in this series, in this presentation. So our next panelist is a case manager with the YMCA Nova Scotia Works Employment Services Center in Glace Bay. She works on elements of job search, so all of them. So if it's resumes, cover letters, interview prep, online applications, this panelist has done it all professionally and well for years. She is a CBU alumna. She has a Bachelor of Arts from CBU in '96, and she also has an MA in English from Acadia. And she, once again, is someone that I worked with, and so I would love to introduce my good colleague and friend, Tamara Kyte.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. I will just say I am an old enough alumna that it was actually UCCB when I went, which I should have indicated. So as I mentioned, I'm here. I'm just going to go quickly through some aspects of job search. It's a very condensed version. There's a bit more to it, but we're trying to keep to time to 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to skim over some areas that I feel that you guys might know about, and just try to concentrate on maybe some areas that might be new to you or that you might not be familiar with. So the first thing I will say though is just make sure you have all of your materials together, ready to go. So Joey talked about your resume and your references. Make sure you have any of your certificates and diplomas ready to distribute. So whether that's hard copies or scanned copies, some job applications will actually now ask you to upload a copy of some of your credentials. So if you have all that stacked together so that you're not digging it out of the back of the closet last minute, that will serve you well. So where are you going to look for work? How do we look? So there's a few different places you can look for work. Online job sites. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with a lot of those online job sites like Indeed and Job Bank. Some people use Kijiji, all of those. Employment Services Center. So as Joey mentioned, you can come see someone like me. So the YMCA has 3 centers in the CBRM. There's also Island Employment, and then there's NEDAC on the north side. So we can do everything from just a resume review, if that's all you need, to a long-term extended job search assistance with that. Newspapers, a little old school, but there are still some good job ads in newspapers for sure. And then warm network and cold network. So this is where we're going to spend a little bit more time. So a warm network, all right, well, your network is just sort of people you know, people that you're connected to. Your warm network is people that you know already and that you have connections with. So your friends, your family, your extended family, profs from school that you know well and that know your work. You know, the cashier at the convenience store that you go to on a regular basis that know you. All those people are your warm network. You have a direct connection or an interaction with those people. Your cold network, or what you're going to develop, is of a cold network. Those are people that you don't know. Don't know them, don't have any connection with them. You're going to seek them out, make contact, and try to make them part of your network. And when it comes to networking, this is where Rob and Lee will be probably a great deal of help for you guys in terms of helping you develop those networks. And then the reason that we're going to spend some time on networking is because of something called the hidden job market, which we'll talk about in a few slides. So the hidden job market is just what it sounds like. It's hidden. You can't see it. So it's not on the online job sites. It's not there. It's hiding, and you have to go find it. So when you're maintaining and developing your network, so that just includes staying in contact with people you know, there are different ways to communicate with both the people you know and the people that you don't know yet. So in person, you know, that's great. You can have that in-person interaction. Obviously with COVID and some places still under precaution, that's going to be a more difficult way to communicate with people sometimes. Telephone, so you can call someone on the phone. We're going to talk about cold calling in a minute, again, which is reaching out to someone you don't know. For some people, telephone's more comfortable because you don't have that in-person, that awkwardness sometimes people feel when they're communicating in person. Email can be a great way to do a quick piece of correspondence. You know, it also does remove some of that anxiety because you can send off the email and not worry about it. It is hard to identify tone. So watch your tone and the tone coming back to you. Sometimes it may seem abrupt or like they're not interested. That might be the case, or they might just be super busy and super stressed. So it's hard to get that read over email sometimes, but that's also a good tool. And social media. I'm sure most of you guys are pretty savvy with social media. I probably know more about it than I do. But you know, even if you just share something on one of the platforms that you use to say, you know, so excited to be graduated, you know, looking for work now, and, you know, let people know what that is, because you never know. So cold calling, so we mentioned that a little bit. You can do it in person, you can do over the phone, but basically you're approaching someone you don't know. You're just coming at them out of the blue. So you may Google companies that work in the field that you would like to work in, and then try to make some contacts that way. Somebody, again, you know, if you ask your professors, they might know some companies that do what you would like to do. And then you're going to try to find some contact information and work your way into a connection with someone. So when you are cold calling, it requires preparation. So do a little research, Google, know something about that company, about that employer. You want to present your qualifications to the hiring manager, or if not the hiring manager, somebody who has something to do with hiring. So not just maybe the front end staff person, because your resume will probably still get passed on, but you won't have a chance to make that connection and have a quick chat with somebody who then will remember you and not just see a piece of paper that's your resume. And when you make the approach, don't just say, hi, are you hiring? This is your chance to have a conversation and kind of market yourself and talk a little bit about your skills and qualifications, and market yourself, but kind of quickly. So and this is just, I'm just going to skim this because it's a bit of a cold calling handout. You guys will get that when you get the presentation. So just in terms of marketing yourself, I'm going to talk quickly about something called an elevator pitch. So I don't know if anyone has heard of an elevator pitch before. The reason it's called that is because the idea is, say you're trying to get your foot in the door at a company, and you show up at the company in the lobby and you see the person you want to talk to. And maybe they say, you know what, I'm going up to the 10th floor. You have the elevator ride to market yourself, to sell yourself. So you're trying to condense everything into something short and sweet, which is the acronym for your pitch. So you're going to do a salutation or greeting. Hello, my name is Tamara Kyte. What you're hoping to achieve. I would love to arrange a quick 15 to 30-minute meeting to chat with you about your company and the industry and what I might have to offer. I'm a recent graduate of CBU with a BBA with a concentration in accounting. While I was at CBU, I volunteered for the Glace Bay Food Bank, where I did their books. I was able to streamline their processes and save them approximately 5% on their operating budget. And, you know, just thank you so much for your time, and I hope we can chat in future. And that's going to work if you're sending an email, if you're chatting in person, and your cover letter could actually be kind of an expanded version of this elevator pitch. But anyway, you're asking them for something, which is their time, but you're trying to give them something too. You're trying to give them a little bit of who you are with that. So here's the question. Why are you doing this? Why are you having all of these awkward conversations? Why are you, telling your convenience store cashier that you're looking for work and what type of work you're looking for, and reaching out to these people that you don't know and you don't know if they care about you or have time to talk to you? So there is a reason. And the reason is that we would say that there's probably actually 4 stages to an employment opportunity. And those 4 stages have to do with what we're going to talk about, which is the hidden job market. So first stage of an opportunity, there's no job opening. So just imagine a hair salon, and there's 1 manager and 5 stylists. They don't have room for another chair or another stylist. They don't need anybody else. They're going along. Business is great. Things are perfect. That's stage 1. Stage 2, there's a possible job opening and insiders know about it. So one of the hairstylists, Tamara, decides that she would like to move to Toronto. She's thinking about it. She's not sure. She tells one other stylist. She tells her sister and her mother. So there's a job opening. A couple of people know about it. Stage 3, a job opening exists, but it's not advertised. Most insiders know about it. So I've given my notice to the boss. I've told everyone I know. I'm moving. That chair is now going to be open. I'm gone. Stage 4, the job opening is advertised. Now the job's on Indeed. You can certainly apply to it at that point. But guess what? So can the 20, 50 100 other stylists who are looking for work in the area. So obviously you can see that you would like to know about the job or be known to the employer in one of the first 3 stages, right? So if you've cold contacted that employer, so if you've gone in and dropped off a resume, had a chat over the phone and sent them a resume, they might know about you at stage 1 before there's a job opening. Once stage 2 or 3 happens, that it's been announced and that they're looking for people, they might go, oh, do you remember that person who was in the other week looking for work? Why don't we give them a call? They seemed very nice and very personable when you gave them your elevator pitch. So you could imagine that if you're known in that stage, it's much better. Maybe your cashier at the convenience store is friends with one of the other stylists, and you're chatting about how hard it is to look for work and find a job at a salon, and they say, well, guess what? I just heard that someone's leaving. Da, da, da. So you can see how that networking part works and can really pay off. And so you want to be the person. A lot of jobs never get to stage 4 because of this reason, because somebody's pulled out through that networking process. So you want to be the reason that that job doesn't get to stage 4. You want to be the person that got in there first. Because it's difficult for an employer to advertise. It's time consuming, it's stressful, it costs money. If they don't have to advertise, you can imagine that they would rather not, and they're not going to. So that's where the sometimes awkward process of networking pays off, and that's where Robin Lee can help you out for sure. So sorry, I'm just skipping a few slides just in the interest of time. Job search sites, again, you guys probably know about them. A few things when you're applying online. Be very careful when you're inputting your information. As you can imagine, any typos in your contact information are going to be very disastrous. Application tracking systems. So a few of you may or may not know what these are, but basically that's when you're uploading an online application or sending your resume, and it's put into a system that's going to go through that application and that resume for keywords. So make sure you're using keywords appropriate to that position. So for example, if they're saying they want data entry, somebody who's proficient in data entry, you want to be using phrases like performed data entry. You don't want to say comfortable with computers. That's not the same, and it's not going to get picked up the same way that the actual keywords are going to get picked up. So try to mirror back what they've asked for if you're applying for a job, or try to mirror back what you know is important for that role. So in your application, a few things I would mention is definitely watch the application method. So if they've said apply in person, apply in person. If they said send them an email, send them an email. If they say send them an email, don't show up in person. They might not want to see you in person. So do what the employer asks. A, that's courteous. B, it shows that you know how to follow directions. Make sure your resume is up to date. Joey talked about that. Have everything ready. We already talked about that. Qualifications. So when you see a job ad, you don't have to have every single qualification to apply. If you have roughly 65-ish% of the qualifications, you can apply. They might not get everything they ask for, and you might be the best candidate out of those who applied. Having said that, if there's something that is a mandatory qualification, so if you're applying for work as a CCA, if you have personal experience working with elderly parents and seeing to their care, that's great, but you can't work as a CCA, you don't have that designation. Nobody can hire you without that designation. If they ask for a Class 5 driver's license and the job description talks about doing field work or making deliveries, you can't get around that. They need you to have a driver's license because you're going to have to be mobile. In that case, you might be wasting the employer's time, and then they're going to remember you, but not in a good way. Job application instructions, same thing, follow them carefully. Whatever they've asked for, please include what they've asked for. If they ask you for a cover letter, include one. It's a good idea to use a cover letter for a professional role that you're applying for anyway. If they ask you to include copies of your certifications and credentials, please do that. Again, courtesy and showing the employer that you can follow directions is always great. So one last thing I'll say, just because we're running short on time, keep track of your job search. You think you're going to remember everything? You are not. There's too much to remember. So this is a formal job record that we use in the Resource Center, even in just a notepad. Include dates, include how you applied, what the specific position was with the company, because you might apply for different positions with the same company, you might apply to different branches of the company. If you speak with someone in that company, keep track of it. The time frame is good because I would encourage you also to follow up. So if you've applied, if at all possible, reach out to them, in a few days to a week. You can follow up more than once. Follow-up is good, but just too much follow-up is not good. So if you follow up with them twice a day, every day for a week, yes, they will remember you, but not in a good way. And they are not going to want to hire you. So sorry guys, kind of fast, kind of condensed, but that's my bit on job search for now. And it's great to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That was so much excellent content. I really appreciate it. And I love the plugs for networking. You're right. So moving on, because we are running out of time. So our final panelist is with the HR department in one of the island's most sought after employers. Prior to moving to Cape Breton 4 years ago, she worked with Purolator Inc. in Moncton for over 20 years as a national claims manager and key account manager. But she says moving to Cape Breton was the best move of her life. Here to give us the employer's perspective, Julie Murray of Protocase.
Hi, Robin Lee. Thank you very much. Really excited to be here to talk about just kind of the day-to-day things we see here in the HR department, about some do's and don'ts with regards to resumes. So a lot of this will be kind of repeat of what we've already talked about, anyway, this is just normal things that we see every day. So something that I heard in a conference recently and shocked me was that on average employers spend about 6 seconds reading a resume. That was very shocking to me. I can't even imagine. I can tell you at Protocase we definitely look at them longer than that. So far this year, to date, we've received over 1,200 resumes. So when recruiters are looking at your resume, we're looking to obtain an overall impression of the applicant. We're looking to see if they have the qualifications for the position. And what we see at a glance is very, very important. So we'll go and talk about cover letters first of all. So some don'ts, a quite obvious one to me, but we do still see it from time to time, is the dear sir. Some of us aren't sirs. So there's always another way to address your cover letter. If your cover letter is too long, you risk it being overlooked. You want to make sure that your cover letter is meant for the company that you're applying to. We often see them addressed to other companies and talking about different industries. So right away, that could be a turnoff for recruiters. You're going to want to watch for spelling and grammar, excessive jargon. So the person reading it may not be a technical or an industry expert. However, they are going to have an idea of what they should be seeing in your resume. Poorly formatted or obscure file formats. So sometimes we'll receive resumes and you actually have to download some software to be able to even view the resume. That's going to scare a lot of people off with fear of different computer viruses and such. Large gaps in employment are also sometimes a red flag. Like, we realize people do sometimes take time off from the workforce to, I don't know, perhaps care for a family member or something along those lines. But to see a lot of gaps in a resume, is something that is noticeable. Again, you're going to want to watch your spelling and grammar, and you want your resume to reflect the qualifications needed for the job. Sometimes it's like the resume is being sent in and there's not even one thing that's the same. So I know that was mentioned by earlier presenters. Let me see, what do we have next? Oh, don't forget that recruiters are going to contact you by phone or email. We've had people that we've called, so we've got this resume we're really excited about, we want to meet the person, and we call and leave a message for them to get back to us, and we don't hear anything for 3 weeks. Well, once you call back 3 weeks later, the odds are pretty good that we've probably moved on to other applicants. So make sure that you're checking your phone and your email for calls back. So some cover letter and resume things that are great to see. Keep your cover letter short. The cover letter is a great way for us to get to know you a little bit, but you just don't want it to be too lengthy, as we talked about earlier. And you want to follow the application guidelines. Sometimes they can be very specific, and you want to make sure that you do include all of the points that they've asked for. And sometimes that's even as simple, if you're submitting your resume by email, is to put the job you're looking at in the subject line. Tailor your resume to the position you're interested in. You want to structure it in chronological order. Remember to include your education and relevant experience. Ensure maximum readability by using bullet points. And an accurate geographic location is a great idea. So we get applications here from people all over the world, and a lot of times they'll indicate that they're located in Sydney, Nova Scotia, and then you start looking through the resume and it shows that they're presently working in Texas. So just put that you're willing to relocate. That's wonderful. And we also love to see volunteer experience and hobbies. So when you put that stuff in, it talks about your community involvement. And sometimes when you list your hobbies, it just piques the interest of someone. You just never know what's going to catch someone's attention. So we love to see that. Include the timelines for your past jobs. I love to see references included on the resume. Please make sure that your references are aware that you're using them. It's very awkward when you call and they have no idea that this person has used them as a resume. Keep a list of all the jobs you've applied for. Many times you're sending out resumes to numerous places. And again, it can be an awkward moment if a recruiter calls you and you don't even really remember applying there. So when I first started working many years ago, we didn't have the internet, so it was really hard to find out what companies did. So it's so easy now. Do a quick search of companies that you're applying to so that you have an idea of what they do. It's bizarre to me when people come in and we're in an interview talking and they go, so what do you do here anyway? I just find it odd that it's so easy to find out. So do a little bit of research. Definitely it will be noticed. And the very last thing I want to mention is passion. I love it so much when someone walks in the door here and they're excited about the work that we do. They tell me why they want to work here and how they'll contribute to our team. So that excitement is contagious. We love to see that, and it can really make you stand out to prospective employers. It certainly does for us here. So that's about all I have. Thank you so much. And back to you, Robin Lee.
Oh, Julie, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. The employer perspective is the most important perspective. So thank you to all three panelists. You've done a beautiful job. Thank you to CBU Alumni for being such a wonderful partner in this project. You guys are wonderful. Now we have a few minutes for Q&A. So Steve, did you want to say, are you okay before we go? Did you want to say
we got
Q&A?
No, we got some questions there, so I think let's go to them.
All right. So I'm just going to start, and maybe Tamara, if you wanted to answer first, then anyone can pop in. Clint is asking what time period you should cover in employment history, because he's been working for over 20 years, like so many of our talent here. And so he's wondering, he stopped at 10, is that right? How long should your resume go back?
So the standard, and I think I did glance at Clint's question, so the standard does say 10 years. However, I personally am a little bit more flexible with that. Sometimes I will encourage people to go back further just to show continuity, or perhaps in the top part in your profile, you can say, you know, industry professional who's been working for over 30 years. But when your resume only shows the 10 years, you've said, I've been working, but I'm only showing you the 10. If you want to reach back to a job that's relevant to what you're applying for, and so maybe you have another little piece of skill that's awesome from a past job. So for example, when I came to work at the YMCA this time around, I had actually worked at the YMCA 2000 to 2002. You know, that was more than 10 years back at the time I was applying. But obviously I'm going to put that on my resume because they'll be like, oh, she worked here before. She, you know, that kind of stuff. So be flexible. It depends how much space you have too. If you're including 20 years back, but it's not taking up 5 pages, then you can do that. So I'm a little bit more flexible. 10's the standard, but I'm willing to be flexible with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Tamara. Did anyone else want to pop in on that, or are we ready for the next question? Okay, so here's our next question, and anyone can chime in. Do I have to list all the universities that I have attended, even if they're not related to the job? And I would say specifically, this might not be what they mean, but I've seen people who have sort of an extra degree. Like, I was going in this direction, I was a physicist, and now I'm working as a teacher in English. Do I need that master's in physics degree, for example? So Tamara or Julie, if you wanted to pop in, Joey.
Well, I will pop in. I don't know what the real standard would be for stuff like that, but I think it really shows a person's flexibility and different things that they can actually bring to the current role. So I personally like to see that. I think it's very interesting. My thoughts.
Cool. So something that is interesting, that shows adaptability. Joey, I saw you nodding your head. Did you ever want to say anything?
No, I do. I think when we talked about the targeted resume, if you're applying for a physicist position, well, you should highlight that. But I think all education is good, and it's yours, so own it. If you went in a different direction, well, like Julie said, it shows you're flexible, and I think include it all, but definitely target it if you're applying to that sort of position.
Awesome. Thanks, Joey. And while your mic is on, we have another question. Does CBU's Writing Center have a resume checking service? Maybe you don't know.
Not promote it. Career Services would be your first spot to check resumes. The Writing Center is there to help with writing. It's more academic writing to help you in your studies. But I would send your resume off to us first in Career Services, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. And I think once they're maybe 4 months away from graduating, people can also work with the YMCA. So I would do it all personally, because they're all so great.
That's right. So students might be used to being like, oh, well, we went to the YMCA, but they couldn't offer us that much in the way of service, just because our mandate is to help active full-time job seekers. So once you're within 4 months of graduating, obviously you're about to be full-time job searching. So you can come in, and like I said, it can just be a resume review if you want. You don't have to like hang out with us for months on end if you don't want to.
Although they're pretty cool. They're fun people. Okay, so thank you so much. Maybe Julie, if you want to take this one first. Clint is asking, should references only be professional, or is including a personal reference a good idea?
Yeah, I don't mind seeing both. I mean, we definitely want to talk to someone who can speak to, your work ethic and different things like that. But, personal references are fine to see as well. And especially younger people coming out of college or university, they might not have a lot of professional references, right? So a personal reference will speak to their character as well.
The other place I'm seeing that is with newcomers. So they might have professional references, but they want to give a Canadian reference. I don't know what your view is on that, Julie, but if anyone wanted to chime in, I just think that that's the other group that I see needing the personal reference. Yeah.
So we do see with international applicants as well, perhaps people that they've met while they've been here, landlords, neighbors. That's all fine. That it really is, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I've been that kind of reference, and what I'm usually saying is, yeah, they build community here. Yeah, they're I believe them when their heart is here. So thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I think that's pretty clear. Did anyone else want to? Okay. Let's see. Just reading through some of these. Right. So this is for Julie, but I think all of you will have something to think about. Julie, look, having an employer is a big deal. So this person is asking, we're in a pandemic. So are you looking for are there qualities that you're looking for now that maybe you weren't looking for before the pandemic?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, since the pandemic, I mean, we are still operational, and now incorporated into our workday is everybody every couple of hours stops everything they're doing and starts cleaning their workstations, cleaning machinery, cleaning. Like, we didn't generally do that throughout our workday before. I mean, if you spilled your coffee, you cleaned it up, but now, I mean, yeah, so what if someone comes in here and they're actually not really willing to do that? They're not really going to be a good fit for us because, I mean, we're all working here. We have to make it safe, and we all have to pitch in to make it safe. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
I think it does. Tamara, you were smiling. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just thinking that, yeah, that's true, right? There's definitely a new layer and a new layer of team playing, right? That you're now expected to do these things that were kind of outside your scope and add time to your workday, and maybe not be the most fun or the most comfortable, but you have to be willing to do that, or else, like Julie said, you're not going to be a good fit.
I know. I've been spraying down a lot of door handles when I am working in our office and thinking, I've done this since I was a barista. Like, and now it's mandatory. Here's a question that I think any of you can answer. Definitely Tamara, Joey, because Julie's been working hard for us already. So when a job application says something like a 1-year administration course is a requirement, can they substitute a Bachelor of Communications? And if so, how do they talk about that in the cover letter?
Sorry, I was waiting to see if Joey wanted to. So you could definitely try that. What I always tell an applicant is to look at the job ad, and you're going to try to mirror the job ad without just pasting it into the cover letter, right? If you paste the job ad into the cover letter and say like, oh yes, I have all these things, they're gonna know. But just look at what they're asking for, and then just sort of search yourself and your qualifications and see how you meet. It might not be an exact match, but you can show how what you do have matches it. So, if they're asking for somebody with office administration credential, and you don't have that, but in your communications degree, maybe in one of your classes, or maybe at school, you volunteered for one of the associations, and your job was to manage all incoming communications, and you had to do a lot of filing, and you had to keep that organized, and then talk about that. So definitely tell them that you have a degree, because they'll be like, okay, well, it's not the one we're asking for, but they have a degree. And then show how what you do have can work for what they're looking for. It's not always an exact match, and it can still work out really well.
Did anyone want to chime in? That was great. That made so much sense. I would just add that, so this question was specifically about the health authority, which I did not mention. And I would say that it's going to vary by employer. And so if you're like, sometimes with the health authority, they're very specific, so maybe it doesn't make sense there. But I would just, I wouldn't let that stop me if anyone wanted to clarify.
Yeah, and I would say in different employers. So for example, what I didn't get to was actually I had a posting from the CBRM, the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, for a heavy equipment operator. So obviously you have to have your license, yes. You don't have to have a high school diploma to get a license as a heavy equipment operator. You have to have a high school diploma to work for the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. That's a situation where you can't present them something different. You can't present them your license and all your experience and no high school diploma. That's a situation where you can't make that work. Health authority is also pretty particular. But with them, I would definitely give it, like you said, I would give it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I've seen with the health authority is the health authority and the CBRM are two large employers in the area, and they're both unionized. And so the best thing to do is look for the job that's least likely that people want. So the part-time job, the job that's not in Sydney, the traveling job, because that's going to get you into the union. And then once you're in the union, you can start applying for whatever you are qualified for. So you might have to take something that you're not thrilled about for 6 months, but that's what can start your career for the next 20 years in those organizations.
With the health authority, we always encourage people to take the 3% on-call utility worker, even if they want to work in administration, because like you said, you get your foot in the door, you're part of the union. The next time a job comes up, you're now an internal applicant at this point. Yeah. You get preference.
Yes. This is a very specific one. Does Protocase accept applications from outside Canada?
Yes.
I don't know that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. So our volunteering experiences, I'm just going to read this one just because I'm not understanding it, but I think everyone else will. Are volunteering experiences, in addition to professional experiences, relevant across sectors? So so this person has a feeling, I think, that in the nonprofit, they want to hear volunteer, but if it's private sector like Protocase, they don't care about my volunteer. So does volunteering help in the public sector, I think is the question.
I would certainly say yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. And sorry for not understanding that question better to the participant who asked it. Joey, did you want to pop in? You're okay. Yeah, okay. And I would say that the great thing about volunteer is that, Julie, tell me if this makes sense, if I've been telling people something that's true. If you volunteer consistently and you show up on time and you give above and beyond, you're showing the same characteristics that are going to work in the workplace, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And in terms of workplace fit, I think it can say a lot. Yeah, so that's wonderful. Let's see. Most roles in Canada require licenses. You mean, I wonder if that's a driver's license. Is it possible for candidates outside candidates to apply for licenses in line with their career path? You know what? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question.
So this would be more like licenses for regulated professions, like architects, engineers, and the like.
Yes. Did the question make sense? Do you want to ask it?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, Jeremy.
So I actually come from a regulatory background where I actually used to work with regulatory bodies. For the most part, it's not possible to apply for a license in line with your career path from outside the country, but it is definitely recommended that you check with whatever regulatory body governs that particular career before leaving and before coming to Canada, just so you can get everything in line. They'll be very helpful no matter what, and they'll be very appreciative that you checked in advance. Quite often when someone does come and then decides to check, they're looking at potentially years of figuring it out and getting different educations and equivalencies and such. So can you do it? No, but it's definitely a good idea to check now and to get it all in line, because it'll help a lot in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Ebenezer, for being patient while I butchered your question. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now, it's hard to think with a camera on your face. Here's a very specific one. Are there any job openings for design engineers in Protocase?
Well, the best thing to do is check our job board. There is nothing posted today, but please check often. It's right on our website.
Cool, thank you. And thank you so much, Julie. You were being a star. Here's another specific one, and it's back to the account, the what works as what. So this Clint is a BCom, but on the resume, he's worried that it looks like a Bachelor of Communication as opposed to a Bachelor of Commerce. So should he be writing out Bachelor of Commerce? Yes.
Sorry, I keep waiting. I don't want to like jump on top
No,
of
you're being great.
Absolutely, write it out. I know we like acronyms and we like things to be short, and everybody's like, make your resume one page. You can't always make your resume one page. I'm sorry, you can't. And as long as you're putting the good stuff, like Joey was saying, all that, depending what you're applying for, making the relevant stuff at the top. If it's 2 pages, fine. If you need to change your formatting to write it out, and I would, because certainly if I saw BCom, I would definitely assume communications, just because that's what I'm more familiar with, right? So people reading your resume have a bias.
Yep.
I'm more familiar with communications. That's what I'm going to assume. So yeah, just write it out. Save everybody.
Yeah, also, you earned that degree. Take those extra 5 letters. Take the space. Okay, I think we're just about finishing. One more question that I'll read out loud, and then I think that we can wrap it up. As a job seeker who is currently outside of Canada, is it necessary to provide the information that I have an evaluated credential assessment report on my resume? I'm not familiar with that standard.
I wonder if that has something to do with immigration.
It could also be related to the licensing question again.
Yeah.
I believe this is the same question.
Yeah.
And depending on the field of work, it's very possible that there could be some kind of evaluated equivalent of credentials, depending on the type of work. But it's definitely a question for whatever regulatory body you would be a part of in your line of work.
Cool. Thanks. Okay.
I was just going to say, if that is what it is, if it basically correlates that you can work in the country with your credential because it's been vetted, then yeah, put it on your resume and explain what that means. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you both so much. Okay, final question. Is racial diversification prioritized in most jobs? And this is again from our person who's applying outside of Canada, and they're just seeing that whenever you look up the staff in Canada, it does not look diverse, or in Cape Breton, it doesn't look very diverse. And so is diversification prioritized in most jobs here?
I can jump in quickly. Very diverse at Protocase, and that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Tamara, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think it's definitely a priority. I would say our population base for a long time was
pale,
somewhat diverse, but yes, very pale and pasty. I say that as a partially Celtic origin Brenner, but we're definitely seeing more. We're getting, immigration is becoming more and more. We're seeing a lot of international students who want to stay. So our base of applicants, I think, is becoming more diverse, and I think that will reflect. I think most employers, you actually will see that they will often make a statement that they are offering that they would ask you to self-identify if you are a member of a diverse group. And so if you identify and then, meet the criteria of what they're looking for, then yeah. So I'm hoping we see more diverse, a more accurate reflection of our community as we move forward.
Yeah. That's fair. And I would say that it's, I just want to say that it depends on the business to business and even community to community. You can talk to, there are conversations around ongoing systemic barriers, because we have always been diverse. And if you are a community next to a Mi'kmaq community and no one working in that community is Mi'kmaq, then there is a problem. But I also think that with the growing conversations around inclusion, truth and reconciliation, and also with the growing very visible minority of people of color, that the truth is going to be in the pudding in the next few years, because there are so many more people to hire. So we're going to see. So thank you for that tough question, frankly. Thank you to all of the panelists. Your presentations were informative, thoughtful, and very generous. And you were stars to, you're stars to kind of sit here and be on the hot seat, and not in person, but on recording. It's not easy, and you've done beautifully. So thank you. Thank you again to CBU Alumni for putting this on, and for being such wonderful partners and wonderful supports to your alumni community. Thank you all for attending. Make sure you connect with CBU Alumni, and if you're looking to get connected in Cape Breton, please email me at connector@capebretonpartnership.com, but I'll email you anyway. So thank you all. Have a great day.